listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft and people who play it. Today is June 15th, 2023, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing today?
Spencer, hello. It's Thursday.
It is. Yeah.
So here we are. We made it though. We got the show rolling for the week.
Yep.
I'm doing really well. It's like summertime basically. You know, kids are out of school now.
Oh, yeah.
All that stuff is all the end of school year stuff is wrapped up. The problem is, I've been very busy with life stuff, and there are just too many games to play.
Yes.
And not enough time in the day.
Agreed.
In my life. I do need to sleep at least for a couple hours at a time nightly. And WoW is certainly, it's been in the rotation, decently heavy. And I think it's maybe going to be even more this week because of an event we have kicking off in a little bit. So, good times. I wish I was on summer vacation and I didn't have any responsibilities for the next 3 months and I could just play video games like I used to when I was a child. That would be really nice.
Oh my God. No, I definitely miss those summers. That's for sure. Although my parents would always try to find a way to kick me out of the house to go out and actually spend time in the sun. But
just hoping for some rain. Like, could it please rain today? I don't want to play video games.
Could it just be the worst summer ever for outdoor activity? I definitely have been playing some games here and there, man. But my next vacation isn't for a few weeks. I got a few weeks left, and I have a week off, and that'll be really nice to spend doing some games. But this past week for me, I did manage to get some WoW in too. Obviously, this current week, the Catalyst went live, so I also now have tier pieces coming into play to be able to get some tier bonuses going. Still working on profession stuff. Still enjoying doing some Mythic Plus here and there. Nothing too super exciting going on as far as that goes. Like, I get Vault Reward. Vault Reward is like new belt or new boots. You're like, okay, great. There's nothing like super crazy happening in WoW for me. I'm digging the chill aspect of it. I guess the ability to go, you know what? I just want to fly around an herb for like 2 hours. I can do that. That's fine. And I can get a whole bunch of herbs and I can mill them up and I can make some fancy potions, and this is feeling good. Like that's, I'll run a couple Mythic Plus, and this will be fun. So I don't know. I'm I guess steering away from things that cause me anxiety or stress, because that's what my job does at the moment. So I'm finding that the more relaxing, less intensive activities have been the things I've enjoyed the most of my gaming time.
Yeah, I get that, and I do think this season is and this expansion overall is really flexible. But season 2 is really nice because with the item upgrade system and everything, you can kind of make meaningful progress with your character no matter what you're really doing, which is awesome. I don't think that was an option, really in previous versions of the game. You mentioned the Catalyst, and yes, Catalyst is open with regional restarts this week, which is awesome. Lets you convert a piece of endgame gear into a set item or a non-set piece that matches the transmog and takes on other properties of an item that matches your class set, which is cool. And it's sort of back to Shadowlands style. There's no quest to pick up. There's no bar to fill up. Every character on your account gets 1 charge per week. For now, I don't know if they're going to accelerate it or not as time goes on, but for now it's 1 per, and I think it's still hard caps at 6 though. So keep that in mind. As we get about 6 weeks out, you might want to think about just using them on stuff so you're not, hard capped and missing out on charges.
Yeah, definitely be sure you're using them up because it's better to use them than not, for sure.
Yeah, even if you're just using it for Mog, whatever, like just I don't understand why it has a cap, but at least I think we probably mentioned this in the show before. At least the cap is higher than 4, so like you can make like a 4 set, or whatever. That's good at least. But I don't. Yeah. But anyway, that's a huge feature unlock for this patch, and we just have like 1 more LFR wing next week, and then 10.1 is pretty much complete in terms of features and content. As far as we know, there'll be nothing else. So that might mean it's close to time for 10.1.5, right on the heels of that, I would think. So that's pretty cool. I mean, I think 10.1's been a really good patch, and some of the stuff coming in 10.1.5 is going to be nice for quality of life and just some alternative activities to go do, alternative sources of loot, stuff like that is really going to round out what we have on offer here. I still feel like sentiment around the game is very low key. Like, as good as this stuff is, it seems like a lot of people are just super checked out, and that's a shame. I feel like I feel like the content is really good this round, and that the systems supporting it are nice and feel really good to use. So it's kind of a shame when I see that dwindling raid attendance and I'm flying around Zaralik Cavern and there's no other players in there. It's like I can't do the elites because they have 16 million health and I don't have that kind of time. I could probably live, but I'll never kill it, and nobody's ever going to fly by to help me. So I guess I just don't do them.
It's a sticky situation. Well, it's a tricky situation, I guess. Is just that problem of, this is a great expansion. There's great features in it, but there's either so many other games happening right now that are fun to play that people want to go and play those, or there was enough damage done with the last expansion that there's not people who have enough, like, they're too burned out on things that they just want breaks from WoW, or they've just gone and explored other avenues and they haven't come back. Like, it's a really strange situation to be in, to be like, yes, they've actually done a really good job with Dragonflight, but unfortunately the player base has, gotten a crack in it, and that crack hasn't been mended yet. And, Dragonflight's working to do that. But, like I said before, I do think they just need to have next expansion be equally as good, if not better, than Dragonflight. And you will start to see much more retention and much more staying power, because Dragonflight's doing a great job. It's just the issue of, there's either other games that people want to play, or people already have sort of moved on from WoW, and it's going to take another, a lot of consistency to bring them back, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Dragonflight sort of has to be the template for the next era of WoW, and it's going to take time to build back trust and stuff like that with the player base. And it's going to be tough as, the company is embroiled in all kinds of problems, and you're seeing a lot of talent kind of find its way out the door, especially as corporate management, is enacting like unpopular policies that's forcing people to go look for other jobs. That is almost certainly going to affect the WoW production schedule. And that's one of the things I think that they can do to restore that trust and to keep people enjoying themselves, is to have that, like, the production schedule we've seen for Dragonflight has been really rapid. We've seen a lot of changes to the game, a lot of new stuff to do, all kinds of features layered on, and lots of balance changes and stuff. And, one way to keep players happy and feeling like WoW was worth their time and money is to do that. And if that slides, backwards because of brain drain, then they're not going to be able to get to where they want to go. And that sucks, because they made Dragonflight remotely. You don't need to be sitting in an office to do it. They made Diablo 4 remotely.
I was going to say, this is what I wanted to highlight. They made, Diablo 4, the last 3 years was essentially, 2.5 years essentially remote of production. They made Dragonflight entirely remotely. They've done the past couple of Hearthstone expansions remotely. Like, there's so many things that their mobile game that's coming out has been all entirely worked on remotely. It's like, guys, clearly you've proved the model that this can work and you can produce good quality product while you're doing stuff remote. Why are you not supporting remote work so much? Like, I know so many developers that are jumping ship just because they want to continue to be able to work remotely, and they're not being offered that. It's like, geez. I don't understand.
It's going to result in
thinking.
Worse games, just a less competitive spot in the market. Good developers who don't or can't or want to work in Irvine are going to go work somewhere else and do awesome stuff there. And that's a shame, because I think they turn the ship around so much with Dragonflight. There's so much good stuff about it, and I am really enjoying it when I play it, even if I don't have the sort of compulsion to log in for 2 to 4 hours every day on my main and grind stuff out and clean out the outdoor world map and all that.
Yeah. I
think it's good that I don't want to, and that I can do as much of it as feels good to me, and then I stop. I think that's turned into a benefit for me, and the end game content has been so much fun. They've cleaned up so many of the pain points with systems and everything. And also having new stuff to do on such a consistent basis has been really fun. And I don't want to see that stuff backslide.
Yeah, agreed. And so let's hope they keep it up. But before we dive into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft, we want to touch base on ABK stuff because there was, some more FTC business going on.
Yeah, Monday, the FTC filed a temporary restraining order and preliminary injunction seeking to block Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard. I'm just going to paraphrase this article from CNBC.
Well, before you do,
okay.
we did a little recap before we even started recording of just basically saying the purpose behind this entire thing is that the court date for the FTC's filing that they made is after when the deal could potentially close. And so all they're asking for is to either move that court date up or to delay the window that the merger could start happening until after they've had their hearing. That's right.
Right. The concern, I think, for the FTC is that this deal could close at any time because of the various, the two parties' deadlines and all the other processes they've gone through. So let me read from this article from CNBC. The FTC said it fears should Microsoft be allowed to buy Activision, Microsoft would have the power to quote unquote withhold or degrade Activision's gaming products through price, game quality, experience on competitors' offerings, or withholding content from competitors entirely. The FTC told the court that a preliminary injunction was necessary because Microsoft and Activision have represented that they may consummate the proposed acquisition at any time. So, in other words, yes, like you mentioned, the day in court is in the future. I think it's in, I want to say mid-July, might be late July, maybe even a little farther out than that. When this acquisition was announced back in January of 22, the target date to close the sale was the end of June 2023, which is before any time in July of 2023. So I think the FTC is just getting a bit nervous that they're not going to have their day in court, which is why they filed the restraining order and the injunction. I don't know that this materially changes anything about what's at stake in the case or how the case is going to be sort of litigated. But it may mean that they get a day in court a bit sooner. It does mean that there's not going to be anything happening, finalized or anything before their day in court, most likely. They do have a quote in here from Microsoft's president, Brad Smith, who said, "We welcome the opportunity to present our case in federal court. We believe accelerating the legal process in the U.S. will ultimately bring more choice and competition to the market." So, I mean, we've talked about this case a lot, obviously, over the last year and a half on the show.
Yeah.
And I do feel like unless Microsoft and Activision Blizzard have really bad lawyers, they're going to be able to make a pretty strong case that this particular acquisition is not anti-consumer, anti-competitive, especially with the concessions they've agreed to as part of the EU regulatory process. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously, it's got to go to court. It's got to go before the judge, and whatever is going to happen is going to happen. I would love it if they could just have their day in court and we could just get this over with. and as players, as customers, we can all just move on for whatever happens and whatever the new reality is around these companies. If it closes, if it gets blocked, whatever, then it can just be out of mind for the rest of time. That would be lovely.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to seeing what the actual shift will be, because I do feel like Microsoft will come in, probably not do anything for the first few months, but then start making policy adjustment. And I'm hoping a lot of that policy is towards things like working from home, like we were just discussing, being an option for teams at least a few days a week kind of idea. It's surprising that there's just no work from home, as opposed to being like, yeah, well, you have to come into the office 1 or 2 days a week for meetings, but otherwise you can be at home. Like that is surprising to me.
I think they're trying to do forced 3 days a week RTO.
Yeah.
Was the proposal for the Activision Blizzard studios. So yeah, but I mean, a lot of employees are full remote or don't live locally or whatever.
Yeah.
And so how if you live in Seattle, how can you be in Irvine 3 days a week? You can't.
Yeah. All right. Is there anything you want to highlight, Jason, about this past week in Raiden that you want to cover?
Yes. Man, what an emotional roller coaster it's been since the last time we spoke on the show about the state of my gameplay. Since we last spoke, I have now defeated Heroic Sarkareth twice.
Hey.
So that's good. Yeah, we got ahead of the curve last Wednesday. It was weird because we were just hard stuck at 30%. We get into phase 3 stuff, which just kind of fall apart, and it'd be like, okay, how do we do better next time? And the answer was, I don't know. We changed up the strat a tiny bit in terms of positioning, just letting people know like it's okay to use a bit more of the room and, you know, sort of figure out like safe spots to hang out in. And like first pull of the night, we got to like 15%. And I was like, okay, I guess this is going to die tonight. But it took like about an hour and a half of just straight pulls on the fight to get it. We had like a 5% wipe and a 3% wipe along the way, but the kill was super clean. I think we had like one person dead, which is very, very unusual for ahead of the curve kill. It was like 43 wipes, which is really, that's pretty standard, I think, for us for final heroic boss, somewhere in the 40 to 50 pulls range. The nice thing is progging through the rest of the raid was very fast, and this fight is so short, and you can like hard phase it early. The more damage you do, you can get out of phase 2 very quickly if you could push the boss to 40%. So it's nice to be able to have like a 6-7 minute end boss fight, not an 11, 12, even an 8-minute boss fight. You know, It really makes a big difference in terms of people's ability to stay focused and execute. So that was, awesome. Really, really proud of the team. We did it again last night. It took 2 pulls. The first pull, we had kind of a miscommunication, and me and my co-tank both ended up downstairs with the Oblivion stacks. He kind of accidentally stepped in one while I was trying to go down to clear my debuff. But other than that, I mean, the second kill was less clean, but faster. So I love this raid. I think Aberrus is like the best raid we've seen in a long time, just because the fights are so much fun. The execution bar is just lower than we've seen in the past, and you can just have fun with the encounters and kill stuff and get rewarded for it. Like, it's the way raiding should be, in my opinion. Plus, it looks really cool. It has that like total Black Dragon raid vibe that recalls a lot of stuff from like Vanilla or Cataclysm. I'm really pleased with it, and I think it'll be an easy reclear for us going forward. Only thing is, last night we had like 16 people show up, so we could not step into Mythic. We're kind of like poking at Mythic Kazara, but I haven't been able to get the team put together yet, which is frustrating. And then I had one guy just dip as soon as we were done with Heroic, and then another guy was Cross Realm, so he couldn't come yet. So we just stepped in there with 14, just like poking at it, trying to figure out the dance and, you know, get a look at it, but even though it was obviously a lost cause. But hopefully, I mean, I feel like with the way we can gear up and the way that some of these fights are, we should be able to get a couple Mythic bosses under our belts this tier if I can just get 20 people online at once. So.
But it's summertime, and that's when everyone does vacation, and everyone travels, and everyone goes outside. And,
it's like the worst. It's the worst time of year. So I'm not sweating it. If we don't get much, we don't get much. We get whatever we get. I'm enjoying the time I'm putting in, which is the important thing.
Yeah. I mean, congratulations, and I'm glad you guys are getting through it. And it's it is tough to field a Mythic team on either on farm or on prog during a summertime period of time, because it's the amount of vacation that happens, the amount of time people step away. It is difficult to maintain that roster during this window. So I imagine for the next few months, this content is going to be one where we hear about a lot of teams that are kind of either taking a break, or they're, as you talked about, going down to that 14 or 12 person number for the next couple of months. And I think that'll just be not because necessarily the content's bad or, you know, there's something wrong with it, but just it's the time of the year, and that's what we see happen every single year that this game has been out. As people disappear then. But as far as the fights go, like you mentioned, I think 6 to 8 minutes is still an ideal time for a fight. I think 10 is like the most you'd ever want to ask of someone, which was why when we ran into like the 15-minute Sylvanas fight, it was like, this is ridiculous. What are we doing here? Asking people to be this focused, way too high. It's this so focused high for this long, and remember this many, you know, movements and things about their character is just out of control. So I'm very happy to hear that you guys are having a good time in there, and that it's looking like they've learned their lesson to a certain degree for this raid tier, and hopefully they continue that going forward. We're not going to put raid fights in that are longer than 8 to 10 minutes ever. Would be really nice to hear. So yeah.
I hope that this is the model. I hope that they didn't just go easy on us because, like, well, it's summertime and the metrics aren't good in this expansion, so this is just gonna be a freebie, and then we'll get back to it in Thanksgiving. Yeah. Like, no, man, I think this feels so much better for so many players, and none of my people are complaining about the difficulty bar.
Right.
Nobody's like, this is too easy. I want to raid. This is a joke.
Yeah.
Nobody's like that. Everybody's just showing up and having fun, and it's so crucial to keeping the roster together in the first place. You know.
Well, and that's how you maintain a roster coming through the summer slow months into the new content, right? People will want to come back because they remember how much fun they had with the previous raid tier. So even if they aren't showing up right now, they will show up again when new content comes around, which is the nice thing about it. So
yeah. So on the other side of the PvE coin, I actually had a really good week of Mythic Plus, including the last couple nights with this Fort week. Last time we spoke, I was lamenting being stuck below 2,200, and I'm well over 2,300 now. I am getting close to Keystone Hero already, and I got a couple low scores hanging out there still. I've been, roster has been in flux for dungeon teams, and I've been playing with a bunch of different people, just people that are interested in playing and trying different combos out. So, it's been kind of a struggle on that front and just keeping people engaged, but we do have some people that are really dedicated to doing that. And so, I think that the team is starting to round out, even if it's not like a set 5 of us with maybe one guy subbing in and out. If it's more like a collection of, I don't know, 8 or 9 or 10 of us who are all sort of forming groups or like rotating in and out between runs. I like this Mythic Plus pool, but Tyrannical feels so much harder than Fortified right now. And part of that is we don't know the bosses, but it's weird. Some seasons I feel like the gap is more narrow, and some seasons I've actually felt like Fort was harder. But this season, maybe it's because of the way the affixes got changed up, and they've sort of tried to de-emphasize affixes' role overall in the dungeon. Fort just feels like they almost feel like freebies sometimes compared to Tyrannical weeks. But so other than that, getting more dungeons done means I'm getting more aspect crest fragments, which means I'm getting more crests, which means I'm getting more gear. So I'm at like 440 item level now. I finally replaced my cloak on Tuesday night from normal. I still had a season 1 cloak, so now I have a normal mode cloak.
Nice.
But that was the domino that had to fall. I made myself some 447 legs last week because the warrior set legs are not statted well for me, and that's a big stat budget slot to have bad stats in, or like not ideal stats in. So being able to just make 447s because you put the time in feels so good to just be like done with that slot. And now I'm probably going to take a step back from hoarding my crests for crafted gear, because I got like 3 pieces of crafted 447. I had 447 hands out of the vault, not this week, but last week. So I got like my hand slot is done with the catalyst this week. So I've been doing, single aspect crests to get my hero track gear maxed out at 441. So I'm starting to really get a lot of power now and optimize a bit more. My character feels so good in dungeon gear. I'm still using the Annulet in raid, because most of the raid fights are like single target, and the single target nuke is just kind of irreplaceable right now.
Right.
But the Annulet is getting nerfed pretty heavily in the upcoming patch. So sitting at like 36-ish% haste or something on gear feels so good. It's a world of difference from 25%. So I'm sort of looking forward to the nerf coming in, where it's like, well, I don't really feel compelled to use the Annulet anymore. I'm comfortable to just have throughput. So I mean, I'm having a good time. I might be done for the week. Like, we're not going to raid on Sunday because it's Father's Day. We got a lot of dads in the guild, and everybody kind of wants to just chill and not try to slap together a 20-man on a Sunday night, which is already dicey. I would love to get some more dungeons in, though, because this week is great, and I want more raiding. This is the week to do it. We'll talk about it more in a bit, but I don't know if I can squeeze another night of WoW this week.
Yeah, it's there's certainly something to prepare for coming up if you're looking to do a bit of a grind. So we'll have to see what that ends up looking like for a lot of players, what they choose to do with their time around it. But let's hop into what's going on this week so we can talk about it. All right, this week is the Mists of Pandaria Time Walking event, where characters level 60 and up can access Gates of the Setting Sun, Temple of the Jade Serpent, Stormstone Brewery, Shadowpan Monastery, Mogushan Palace, and Skolomance on Time Walking versions. Completing 5 of these gets you a cache of 415 plus Aberrus loot, And obviously the dungeon rewards are lower. They're down at that 385 eye level, and there's the vendor selling off 372s. Both of these feel like they need to get a knock in the proper direction towards being a little bit more relevant, but it is a good way to sort of gear up some characters. You also have the Sign of the Mist buff up, where you can get some more reputation gains from combat and quests around Missa Pandaria. And this is still a good way to level, which is going to play into effect with the other buff coming out this week, Jason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a great week to level up. Starting 4 minutes ago, because we'll talk about it. But we got the Diablo.
Welcome to Sanctuary buff.
XP buff. You're done with Diablo 4 for 2 weeks, right? Please play WoW now.
Yeah.
But yeah, these dungeons are super quick runs. Time walking is a great way to level from 60 to 70 in Dragonflight, and getting bonus XP on top of that is also really good. So I might have to make this happen on some tunes this week, just because I like to tank. I like the combat gameplay in general. I like to be in combat, so a good way to level up is just to be in combat all the time in a dungeon. It's pretty fun. So and the cache of normal loot could be relevant, right? I don't think you can get a set item out of it, but you could get an item that you could put in the catalyst.
Yep.
And the stuff does have upgrade tracks, so you can get it. I mean, 415 raid drops go up to like 437 they max out at or something. So, I mean, it could be a relevant reward even for like a heroic raider, because, dude, if you get like Sarkareth loot, like the nuke trinket from Sarkareth or something, normal mode, who cares if you get it up to item level 437? It's going to do. I mean, I got that last week, I think, or the week before, and I've been using it in dungeons and even on like boss fights. The on use on that, it crits for like 2 million damage. So it's, you could maybe just rip that item like that. That's a good reason to do 5 very simple time walking dungeons this week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so the 2 parts there, right? First being the Welcome to Sanctuary, the Winds of Sanctuary buff is coming up, which means that reputation gains are going to be increased by 50% between now and July 11th. So you got a month, basically, of 50% increased reputation gain. Not reputation, experience gain. But on top of that, you also do get the reputation gain as well. There's all reputations except the Loam Niffin, for whatever reason, is getting increased by 50% as well. So
all reputations except the one that you want to level up. The only one that you probably care about right now does not apply.
Yes, there's some sort of pacing that they're trying to maintain there, I guess. So I mean, if you're looking to level up characters, like, now is the time. Obviously, you can go and do time walking versions of the Miss Pandaria stuff and get more experience gain. We got more events coming up with more experience as well. This is definitely going to overlap a couple of holidays, including the Darkmoon Fair next month at the beginning of July. So you'll have even more reputation potentially adding on to this 50%. So it is time, if you are looking to like grind out an alt, that you can do that substantially faster than you could previously. So it's certainly worth looking at. We'll dive into a few more of those other holiday things a little bit later on. But for now, just be sure you're doing the Aiding the Accord. Obviously, that's going to be 3K reputation plus 1,500 additional, just because, it's the buff right now. So 50% increase is going to be a big deal for the Aiding the Accord. You got your dungeon quests and rewards to get out there and do your fighting as its own reward for the 5 heroic dungeon completions. Get you that 415 eye level loot, 15 Drake Shadow Flame crests. There's arena skirmishes and solo shuffle happening. We got Comp Stomp, which is the best brawl of them all. So Arathi Basin with AI is what you're against. So basically players against bots. You can have like 4-minute or 5-minute Arathi Basins. This is the best honor grind week you will run into in a long time. Just getting out there and doing your marks of honor and your conquest and your additional honor for completing something different by beating the brawl once. But if you just keep running them, you'll earn a ton of honor this way, and you can do it really fast, and everyone's having a good time, and no one's being salty, which is just really nice about it.
I should do this week. I haven't done it in a while, and it's so fun. And I don't know what you really need to get the PvP gear, but I will say that the PvP tint for the warrior gear set is so good. It's like this deep green color, and it's like this. The warrior set is like dragon themed. It looks like you're wearing a suit that looks like a dragon, basically. So, But Comp Stomp rules. If you never did it, you should do it, and you'll feel like a god of Arathi Basin.
It's true.
It's fun.
Great way to get those achievements done too if you're looking for Arathi Basin achievements. So certainly a nice thing to do. They've got the world bosses, obviously. There's the Akali Elders down in Zaralek Cavern, dropping you that 415 eye level loot, which, you can always choose what you want to do with, but it's certainly a good piece of gear. And then you also have the Bazul, the Dreaded Flame, the big fire proto-dragon Azure Flame, dropping you 395s. If either of those have any interest to you, be sure you're knocking those out this week as well. Mythic Plus affixes are Fortified, Storming, and Bursting. So non-boss enemies have more health and inflict increased damage, while in combat, enemies periodically summon damaging whirlwinds, and when slain, non-boss enemies explode, causing all players to suffer damage over time, and this stacks. So this is just ugly trash week, is what this basically is. There's a few benefits here. Fortified does mean that the lower health mobs inside packs will take longer to die, which means that you can control bursting a little easier. You're not going to have situations where people pop their initial AoE and 8 things die and you get 8 stacks of bursting and then your whole group just starts dying. So that's less likely to happen when you get fortified bursting weeks. So I do kind of prefer those. But you are running into a situation where, they're going to have trash that's healthier trash that's up longer, which is spawning more, storming whirlwinds, which is going to disrupt people and slow them down more, which, the more they're disrupted and slowed down, the less likely they are to stay on the correct target, which means that you then end up with more bursting stacks. And this can spiral a bit. It's not the worst fortified week you're going to run into, but it's also just not, it's kind of gross for trash. It's kind of a gross week for trash. Not a terrible.
Bit, yeah. It's not, no, it's a decent combo overall because, you do still have storming on bosses, but
bursting doesn't factor, yeah.
Bursting doesn't factor at all, and storming is like a non-issue on many bosses. There's some bosses where it's a bigger problem, but overall, I did a couple. I've done like 4 or 5 dungeons this week, and most of these have felt really good.
Did you do a freehold this week?
We did a freehold this week.
And how was storming with the last boss on freehold?
It was fine.
Okay.
We didn't have any issues. People are used to kind of repositioning on that boss, I think, anyway. Your tank is constantly kind of dancing in and out of the boss's face, right? Because he's got that whirlwind slash. And, the ranged are used to having to kite the cannonballs back and all that. So, it helps that I almost always run with my hunter buddy so he can, like, trap the bomber ad guys and all that. We did a Vortex Pinnacle last night, which, let me tell you, Vortex Pinnacle with Fort's storming is quite an experience. There's already a lot of tornadoes in Vortex Pinnacle. I don't know if you know that. And especially with like second boss, positioning on second boss is really crucial. Mm-hmm. And there's already tornadoes everywhere that knock you up into the air. So, but it's not a tyrannical boss, so it died pretty quick. Overall, I think as long as you can navigate the trash confidently, this is okay. Like you said, bursting kind of has like anti-synergy with fortified, actually. You would think that it goes the other way, but because they have the 20% more health, you have bigger gaps in between when they die usually, unless you have like really, really solid, multi-target cleave where you're doing, essentially 100%, damage to multiple targets for sustained periods of time. You can usually hold off, and you have a wider window if you have too high stacks that you need to back down. Also, my typical Demon Hunter buddy is running Shadow Priest this tier, so Mass Dispel is a thing, which is nice. It is magic dispellable and all that. So, overall, I think the big thing is this week, you have to know your route. You have to have your route locked in. You have to have your pulls locked in and know exactly what you're going to be pulling and killing it, because you need to navigate through the trash as fast as you can to be able to time the dungeons. You are going to be slogging your way through a bit, and you don't want to tax your healer. If you don't have a priest available and you can't rely on Mass Dispel if things get hairy, then you do have to keep an eye on that stuff and keep your bursting stacks manageable. But like, you can chain pull as long as you're careful about bursting stacks this week. You can pull big if you're confident about it. Overall, I think it's pretty good. The affix combos that we've been seeing in this season, to me, it really feels like a breath of fresh air from season 1, where we had bad overlaps and the seasonal affix, and we're learning 8 new dungeons, and it was just everything all at once. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I'm saying to me it feels better and it feels more manageable and it feels more like you're playing the dungeon and you're not playing the affixes. And that's kind of, I like that. I prefer that to, all right, how do I min-max the seasonal affix around all this other stuff that's happening? And, how disruptive are the affixes versus what I'm actually supposed to be doing in the dungeon? It feels way more in favor of the dungeon being the primary antagonist and not the affixes.
Yeah, I get that. I entirely get that. So, I mean, I hope people's M+ experience this week is good and that they enjoy, getting some more rating up in there.
The awesome thing about it, I mean, I think this is the thing we haven't really touched on a lot on the show is like, they kind of reshuffled the whole structure from where the affixes come in. So, you don't get storming until 7 and you don't get bursting until 14.
True.
That lets you work your way like really far into the system to get rewards, crests for upgrades and all that stuff. Like as you kind of get used to it, I think that's really nice. I mean, we haven't really heard from too many people who are sort of approaching it that way and maybe working up, from lower keys and into maybe higher keys than they did before. I haven't heard from anybody through the show that's like doing that or anything, but it seems like that opportunity is real, man. I mean, you can get some nice stuff in that like 11 to 13 range before that the second affix kicks in, where it's going to be the execution bar is going to be much lower at a 13 rank than it has been in the past, and the payoff is higher because of the upgrade system. So this is like if you haven't really been getting into Mythic Plus yet this season, this might be the week to start dipping a toe. I think it's pretty accessible.
Yeah. Okay. Midsummer Fire Festival is going to be running from June 21st until July 5th. So obviously that's the potential for 10% more reputation and experience gain. We don't know if that stacks with the Winds of Sanctuary buff, but if it does, then, it's just going to get juicier as the month goes on. That also should overlap, I believe, with a Darkmoon Faire, if I'm not mistaken. It will, because we have Darkmoon Faire kicking off on July 2nd. Which means that you could technically at some point have 70% increased experience gain for a few days.
Man, if that all stacks up, it's going to be a bonanza. Yeah. Mark your calendar and just check it out.
Yeah.
It may not all stack up. They've kind of broken that stuff stacking. I hope it does because it would be awesome.
It would be awesome if it actually could. All right, notable hotfixes that we got going on right now in the game. As far as Balanced Druids go, Wild Mushroom and Fury Valoon will both now actually do damage to a target if they move out of line of sight of the Druid. This feels correct as a dot class at the moment. That's what they've designed Druid around. Why would they have abilities that chase a target or that the target walks into that don't do damage to them if the Druid can't see them? I don't understand it. So I'm glad they fixed it because that would be irritating on so many levels. And I'm curious if this was found out by the devs or whether this was found out by players submitting and complaining a lot of complaints about, hey, I'm doing this boss, and when I step behind this pillar, my damage substantially drops every time I step behind this pillar. Oh, that's why. Like that would be unfortunate. So, yes, I'm glad that that got all resolved. There were also
it's also not like we're in a content season where there aren't times where you have to get behind some terrain or something.
Exactly.
Right. Or like where breaking LOS is important for some mechanical reasons sometimes. So yeah, that's good.
Yes, I'm glad that they are resolving that. There's also some fixes that happen through a few other classes. So if there's something in particular that you want to check out in the hotfixes for your class, they might have resolved it, including Discipline Priest, where they fixed an issue where Radiant Providence from the Discipline Priest 4 set bonus would reset when engaging a dungeon boss. So probably shouldn't be doing that. Just putting that forward. Things like that get sort of resolved. Whether it's a good thing for you or a bad thing is still kind of up in the air. They also, for Holy Priest, fixed an issue where duplicate Prayer of Mendings from the Holy Priest 2 set bonus would cost twice as much mana to have that happen. That's not, it's not buy one, pay for the second one twice. That doesn't, it's supposed to be buy one, get one free kind of concept here. What is happening? So, yes, I'm glad that they resolved that for people as well, because hey, burning through your mana twice as fast really isn't fun. Let's just, it's actually a negative to your set bonus. You put this gear on and stuff gets worse. That's not what you want.
I mean, these are usually the issues with set bonuses are like, well, the old one's too good and they never nerfed it, so I can't put the new one on. But I guess once in a while it's like, hey, this just makes a thing worse. Like, no.
Yep. As far as dungeons go, in Aberys, the Vigilant Steward, which is Zagarn, got some reworks as well, as far as some nerfing went. It's a really big pass where they reduced the health for smaller group sizes on normal and heroic. Shrapnel bomb dot damage was reduced by 50% on normal and heroic. We saw Searing Claws, Unstable Embers, both also reduced damage on normal and heroic. The traps are now magic dispellable on heroic, which is a big deal. And the trap's activation time was increased to 5 seconds from 3 on normal. And the deactivation time, the trap time was increased to 4 seconds from 3 on heroic. So yeah, overall, they're trying to make this as accessible as possible for teams that are still struggling or trying to get through it, or just make farm a lot more fun to do. So Zaskarin certainly got tweaked up quite a bit inside that pass.
Yeah, Zaskarin is the closest thing to a roadblock that we have in this raid. I don't think it's that hard compared to previous roadblock type fights that you might think of in years past, I don't know, Ashvane or something, Elandris. But it is still harder than the bosses immediately before and after it, or at least it was. They also tweaked the visuals around Dragonfire traps when they're activating, which is nice because you can actually kind of see the radius that's going to be unsafe, with that extra second or two before the traps pop up, which gives you way more time. If you're tanking this boss, you have to be deliberate with positioning, right? You want 2 specific traps to activate next. And to be able to see, okay, this is exactly where I'm going to not be safe once these activate, and I have an extra second to run away from the radius, it actually does make a big difference. It was much easier to navigate that without picking up stacks of the Dragonfire traps dot, and which you can dispel. It's awesome. But yeah, there were just certain elements of this fight that were why is this so much harder than everything else in here? Not that it made the fight impossible or anything, but just obnoxious, And we saw a lot of reworks this fight on Mythic and everything. They changed a lot of stuff with layout and with timing. And weirdly, I haven't found too much of the the tuning changes, the damage that Zaskarin deals and stuff being reduced. I didn't feel that too much, but then again, we sort of quickly got to the point where we're farming the boss out and kind of overgearing it. So, if something already doesn't hurt, then reducing how much damage it does by, even 25% might not be as noticeable. And I think maybe I just ran into that. But, if you were stuck, especially with a smaller group or on a lower difficulty with Zaskarin, I think these are great changes. And just anytime you can update visuals, it's a win. Usually that means that the visuals before were bad and that they needed an update.
Yeah.
See also Sire Denathrius.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Echo Notharian, they also tweaked up a timer, which might not sound like much. Calamitous' Strike's debuff duration was reduced from 40 seconds to 37 seconds on all difficulties. They did this specifically to fix a problematic overlap that was happening. This is always an interesting thing to me because the fight's obviously designed a long time ago, and these overlaps exist, and I guess at a certain point they go, we'll see how it plays out. And now they're at a point where they're like, this is not something that we want to continue making players suffer through, so we're just going to tweak this by a few seconds.
This is really nice because this is the big tank knockback in phase 1, right? And so what happens is Echo hits his target. That target gets knocked back 20 yards or 40 yards or whatever and has this debuff that was 40 seconds. Now, the next one isn't cast 40 seconds later. It's cast 37, 36 seconds later. So I would always take the first Calamitous Strike, and then what I would have to do would be to either try to get Echo caught in a rundown and sort of taunt it back to me before it got to my co-tank. But while my debuff was expiring, I could use a big button and in addition to that to ensure that I lived. But if I wasn't able to catch the taunt in time as he's running back and forth, then he could kill my co-tank, he could kill me, whatever, because I think it's a 200% vulnerability debuff that it leaves. So it's a heavy hit, after that debuff. And Yeah, I think it's actually like all physical damage even. So it was kind of nasty, and the timing just didn't make any sense. Now I can like pre-taunt it and just stand there and be ready to go. So this is a great change. You should never have a thing that's only supposed to be on one tank at a time that casts more frequently than the amount that the debuff lasts.
Yeah, yeah. And they also went through and fixed an issue with his immediately meleeing his target after Calamitous Strike on all difficulties. They also, so being hit twice in a row immediately does suck when that happens. And then Volcanic Heart's radius reduced to 25, reduced from 25 yards to 20 yards on Mythic. So making the fight a bit easier for those Mythic folks. Calamitous Strike's debuff will now be removed when encounter enters intermission on all difficulties. So you essentially aren't running into issues with just taking damage in intermission or increased damage in intermission, which is always unfortunate when that can happen too. And then as far as Scale Commander Sarkareth goes, a series of changes have been made to ease up a bit on the difficulty of this encounter on lower player size groups. Each of these changes are for non-mythic difficulty only and scale back as raid size increases, evening out to about no change on the 30 player raid groups. So the health of Sarkareth and Null Glimmers has been reduced by 6% on 10 player raids. So in other words, they're saying, okay, so it's 6% on 10 player, which means it's probably 3% on 20, which means it's 0% on 30 is what they're sort of going for here. The duration of Astral Flame buff increased from 23 seconds to 30 seconds for players in 10-man raid groups. Oblivion tick damage, Void Surge damage, and Dread raid-wide damage has all been reduced for 10-player raid groups, and then the contribution damage towards Blazing Blast and Void Blast is now properly reduced by Absorbs. And Motes of Oblivion should now be more visible when they're against the ground itself. Yes, it's always nice to not have a similar color on a similar color inside of a raid fight when you're trying to avoid mechanics, trying to do something. Please make them highlight in bright orange or fluorescent colors so I can find them. That's always nice.
Yeah, put hard edges on things is always nice too. Even for non-10 player groups, some nice changes here. I think the Sark fight really feels pretty good overall, but I love the change that Absorbs actually works now for Blazing Blast and Void Blast. This is the thing where the tank gets the debuff, and then the debuff lasts for a while, and then when it expires, it explodes for raid-wide damage based on how much damage the tank actually took from it. So being able to just like pop some Ignore Pains on this and have that count along with other stuff that I'm doing is really nice. The Motes of Oblivion change, I think, mostly affects Phase 3, where it can be kind of hard to see how to get, or it used to be kind of hard to see how to get downstairs. You had these kind of beige, kind of purple, I don't know how to describe them, but kind of these pale little swirlies on the ground, and you'd have to catch them as they fell, and that you needed to do two of those to get downstairs. Now they made this more of like a bright blue color. It stands out a lot more against the background, and it's way easier to tell, like, okay, I'm going to stand here and maybe two of them overlap, and I'm going to go downstairs really quick, and then I'll be right back. Which is an important mechanic, I think, to mastering the fight, especially on heroic and above, because the debuff that you get, it does ticking damage. Like it ramps up the more stacks you have. It does hurt. So like you don't want to be sitting on 5 or more stacks of it when you could just go downstairs, clear it, and get a huge haste buff on your way back up, and movement speed buff, which is nice on that big platform. So
right.
Glad to see this. I'm really glad that they're tweaking stuff like quality of lifestyle in Aberrus, the way stuff displays various graphics for mechanics and stuff. Just you should give players as much visual information as possible. It's always an improvement. So this was really nice last night doing this after this change. It was much more obvious where was a good idea to stand if you were trying to go downstairs. Yeah,
I'm glad that that they're doing little tweaks like this to sort of help out players get through that last little bit of prog, or at least make farm a little bit more fun to do. Halls of Infusion, they fixed an issue where Infuser Saria's Inundate spell could inflict inconsistent amounts of damage. That's odd that it could just be like a big dice roll as far as the variance goes on that, so I'm glad they resolved that. And as far as Mythic Plus goes, the Brackenhide Hollow, they fixed an issue that caused summoned infected lashers to grant enemy forces credit Yeah, if you can just sit back and just kill summon Lashers over and over again and get your 100% forces completion and then skip everything else, that's not intended. Yeah.
Keep that in mind if this was part of your Brackenhide route, was to wait for... I don't know how much the summoned infected Lashers are really granting. Usually when we have something like this in a Keystone, they don't grant very much. Like, it wouldn't actually be time efficient to wait for spawns, but I don't know. Like, I wasn't aware that this was a thing, so I don't know how much it was contributing, but yeah, I mean, like, summons really shouldn't count towards anything, so it makes sense. Just if that has some impact on your route, be aware.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, and then as far as items go, there wasn't anything super major that they went through as far as item changes went, but they did make the Unbound Legacy primary stat and speed granted to allies reduced by 70% in PvP for Nazuro's The Unbound Legacy, and then they also did another PvP nerf to Dejarin's Pillar of the Elder Flames by 50% in PvP combat. So just trying to get these trinkets in line so that you're not just one-shotting or destroying or, crippling people with these trinkets when you shouldn't be inside PvP. Same thing with some of the changes to Monk and Shaman as far as PvP goes, where they fixed an issue that caused the Soul Fang infusion from the Mistweaver 2-piece to regenerate more mana than intended in PvP combat. And Lava Lash damage is currently increased by 35% in PvP combat for Enhancement Shamans. So you might be smacking a little harder with those Lava Lashes as an Enhanced Shaman. Okay, PTR. As far as PTR goes, characters level 10 to 60 that have not been logged in for 60 days will now have the option to receive a welcome back gift on the character screen. The welcome back gifts allow you to select a specialization upon login to become equipped with updated bags and gear that is appropriate to character's level and selected specialization. All previously worn items can be found in the mailbox for that for that character. Teleport to the character's home city of Orgrimmar or Stormwind becomes available for them as well, which I suppose you could just buy a Stormwind cloak for, but it's nice to just give them a teleport. And all quests in the quest log will be cleared to provide... Well, I guess they get teleported is what they're saying. No matter where you were, you will end up in one of those two cities at the very beginning when you log back in. And then all quests in the quest log will be cleared to provide a clean slate to continue your leveling journey. Head to Chromie in Orgrimmar in the embassy, in Stormwind's embassy. So, I mean... Overall, this is, I think, a great idea for bringing players back because it allows players, when they log in, to essentially start in a less confusing puzzle time. It does stop people from being able to link quests to their friends that don't exist anymore in the game that have been sitting in your log for the last 10 years because it will clear your quest log. So, there is that pressure to, you got to keep logging in at least once every 60 days on those characters if you want to maintain the ability to link stale quests to your friends.
Well, this is an opt-in. You don't have to do this.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
No. So, yeah, you can choose to opt into the Welcome Back program. So if you do have, like, the Horde needs Purple Lotus and you don't want it cleared, then don't opt into this.
Exactly. Oh, man. Developers' notes for classes, they're in PTR. We are lowering the effectiveness of all primordial stones that deal damage by 40% to increase gearing options for players. We are compensating specific specializations that are commonly using the Onyx Amulet rings for this damage loss. Alongside this, we are reducing the effectiveness of damage to healing spells to effectiveness of damage. I think they mean to say and healing spells to maintain similar healing output. I guess the damage doing this would do to healing spells. It's a weird ways to phrase things. Anyways, this will result in an overall increase in healer damage damage of... Man, they really messed up the wording on this. Alongside this, we are reducing the effectiveness of damage of healing spells, is what I assume they mean to say there. Like healers' spells that they can cast that do damage. It will result in overall damage increase in content where the Onyx Amulet is not utilized, but we feel there is room for healer damage to increase in this space without overly incentivizing offensive play. See the class specifics for this, and so they sort of dig into Druid a little bit here, where Rebirth now costs 2% of base mana, was 0%. The cost is unchanged for Guardian Druids in bear form. This is obviously something to, drain healer mana a little bit more. It also means your healers are going to be yelling at your tank to res people before they do. Just like putting that out there. Balance, the mana regeneration rate was increased by 100%. Was 150, so it actually nerfed it by 50% for that. Same thing with Feral Druids. Guardian, all ability damage increased by 6%. Restoration, all ability damage increased by 25% for Resto Druid. So Resto Druid's going to be pumping in this next patch that we get coming out. And they also fixed an issue that caused Life Bloom to cost more mana than intended when using the Undergrowth talent. So, I mean, let's what they're basically doing here is going, hey, you know what, we want to make it harder for off-specs to heal, and we want to make healers feel like they can actually pump a little more. So this is the tweaks that we're getting for Druid. It's welcome. I'll be curious to see how this affects things. I don't like that Rebirth is going to cost mana now. But, you know, it is what it is. Because I do think you're going to run into healers telling other people to res people. It's just the way it's going to end up being.
Yeah. Well, at least they added more B-reses into the game.
It's true. We can yell at
a lot of people are playing, so
warlocks to do it more often now.
Make your Ret Paladin do it. You know, it's one of their new toys. Also, Prot Warrior is getting another damage increase, 6% across the board currently. We just got one hotfixed in like 2 weeks ago, and the patch can't be more than, I don't know, I would think like 3-4 weeks out at the most, right? Like, you've got to think it's going to be pretty quick on the heels of LFR being fully open next week. So yeah, I mean, I have been using, like I mentioned earlier, I still use the Annulet in raids. I don't really want to. You know, the Annulet had its moment. It was this cool bonus to kind of coast through the end of all of the incarnates with. We've moved on. I want something higher item level than 424, just for, you know, I don't know, consistency, just because it makes me feel good to see stuff all around the same item level or whatever.
Right.
I want more throughput stats. I want more stam, you know? So I'm a bit surprised, I guess, that they're doing it in this patch versus having done it in 10.1, although I guess that makes more sense because it was powerful at the outset of 10.1, gives you a chance to get into Season 2 with a powerful effect and sort of get your footing. And then once you've had a chance to get some gear, now we're going to tone it down and open up your options more for, you know, what you're going to replace it with or whatever. I mean, I think I got to feel like 40% nerf to every Primordial Stone in terms of damage dealt. It's got to take it out of competitiveness for almost every possible situation, right? That's a huge nerf to the effectiveness of these stones. So the cool thing is, though, they're not just like, well, sorry, use a different ring. They're, you know, doing, we're just mentioning the classes we play, but they're doing tuning adjustments like across the board, damage buffs just everywhere, which is awesome. Like, they could have just nerfed the ring and been like, well, you just don't have this option anymore. You're going to do like significantly less damage without it, but you can use that higher throughput item. So yay. They didn't do that. You know, they're doing a huge round of tuning to go along with getting the Annulet out the door. So the Annulet was weird. It was weird from the beginning. Like, I think it was cool. I liked using it and stuff, but it was weird to introduce an item that was that powerful and that customizable, but that its lifespan was basically like a patch, 2 patches, you know? I don't know. It seems like a lot of work to have gone into the Forbidden Reach and Zeskara Vault and the Onyx Annulet for it to just live for 3-4 months. But you know, I'm not a producer in the game. What they spend their time on is not really my problem. I thought it was cool content and I liked the reward for the time that I used it. But yeah, its time is coming to an end. Yeah.
Well, we will have to see how that all phases out for a lot of players, but I'm glad that they're considering it when it comes to balance. Okay, we got another update from Bornak, and this is regarding them getting rid of bot accounts and exploitive accounts. They said that they'd be in touch with us more often about this, and here they are. So to provide more transparency on the actions that get taken against exploitive accounts, here's the breakdown of numbers of actions that have taken place over the course of the last month. In the last month, they have... I guess banned or removed 167,799 WoW accounts. That is the actions that they have taken against those exploitive accounts. All of these accounts are for cheating or exploiting, which are primarily permanent bans or 6-month suspensions. This number does not include separate actions like character name or in-game language violations. We will continue to evolve our methods and act against these malicious accounts on a daily basis. We'd like to thank you, the WoW Classic team. Yeah, so like this is WoW Classic specific. Just like being clear about that. This isn't even what they're doing live game. This is 167,799 Classic accounts that they are banning for either 6 months or banning permanently. So, man, oh man. Yeah, I'm glad they're continuing to give us updates. It's always crazy to see numbers like this because so many people have had the opinion for so long of like, WoW only has like 300,000 players. Like, there's not a lot of people playing the game anymore. And you're like, they're banning hundreds of thousands of accounts a month. Like, oh my God. Yeah, it's still a very big game. There's still a lot going on with it.
Yeah, I mean, this is almost 5,600 account bans per day for a month.
Yeah.
That's a lot, you know? And I know that like in the Classic scene, the botting is, it's a problem. It's a huge frustration. All of the exploits and the bad behavior, especially around economy and stuff, you know, it creates a lot. It creates obviously a suboptimal experience. It creates a lot of bad feelings, and the rallying cry of like just ban the bots. Like, I get that, but they do. The problem is that the bots are not the whole, you know, the entire problem. It's not just like remove the bots and then you don't have any malicious actors in the system. But it's nice that they're just checking in on this. I wonder if this will become like sort of a monthly report of like, hey, here's how many accounts we took action against last month.
Yeah.
These are a lot of bans, and it's not like anything really hot has been happening around the game. Like, there's been no launch, you know. I mean, you have Charlie Crusader coming out in Wrath Classic pretty soon, but we haven't had like you know, any huge content drop. It's just kind of business as usual. And yet, you know, 5,600 bans a day.
Yep. Okay. The other piece of news that we want to cover on today's show is the new book, The War of the Scaleborn for World of Warcraft, is in fact up for pre-order now. It is arriving on October 31st, 2023. Well, that's a convenient date. I wonder why they chose that one. Oh, wait, right. It's directly before BlizzCon when the next big chunk of content is going to get dropped. Probably the last patch for this expansion and the announcement of next expansion is what we're probably going to be looking at for that, but we will find out. So this should be bridging the gap, basically, between this chunk of content and the next chunk of content. This is... I don't want to read the synopsis for it because I don't want to spoil it for anyone who doesn't want to essentially hear about what's going on with it. But basically, you delve deeper into the world of dragons from before the events of World of Warcraft Dragonflight in this prequel. A new light that will shine on the story of the War of the Dragons and impact it has on the future of Dragonflight. So the majority of this is probably going to be, hey, this is what led up to it. But I think there's going to be a lot of twinges around the characters that enlighten you more about what's happening next. So it's going to be cool. I'm looking forward to it. I've already pre-ordered it on my audio book program that I use. I like to be able to listen to these things as I go for walks and exercise and whatnot. So that's my choice format. I think Jason prefers the hard copies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially to get a first print hardcover is what I like to have for my WoW novels. I'm not a huge reader, believe it or not. And I'm the books. I'm not familiar with the novel's author, Courtney Alameda. I think this is probably the first book she's written for Blizzard, for WoW, for the Warcraft franchise. But you know, I was kind of bummed that we didn't get like a prequel novel or any kind of setup or anything for Dragonflight. And if you remember, about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, Sylvanas came out, the novel, which was good and I enjoyed it. And it was sort of if you're somebody who follows the book series and kind of follows the overarching narrative of the universe through not only the game but the other media, like, it was kind of essential, I think, to kind of close that chapter of the game. I mean, Sylvanas was a central character for a really long time, and kind of understanding how all of this fit together in a really deep narrative way and in a way where you could get inside her head and stuff, I think was important for people who care about that. I think it was done really well, but I kind of want the novel to be the thing that sets the table for the expansion, you know, and we just never, I was just like, I guess we're not getting a Dragonflight novel.
Yeah.
And they haven't done a novel a year out from the previous novel, or like within an expansion in a really long time. I mean, geez, when was the last? Was it like Miss Pandaria maybe? No, not even. I don't know. Maybe
they had a post Miss Pandaria
because War Crimes came. I'm trying to remember.
Was War Crimes, right?
Well, that was the one before. That was the one in between.
Yeah.
And I think that was sort of the point where they went to, well, we put out one novel every 2 years and it comes out around, the new expansion, and it kind of sets the stage.
Yeah.
Because before that, in like the Cataclysm era, there were so many novels coming out all the time. I mean, obviously it takes a long time to write a novel, and it's a very complicated process, especially with like a managed IP where you have an author who's contracting with the IP holder to sort of, massage the story and everything like that. I get that, of course, but at one point in time, I felt like they published a lot more supporting fiction for WoW than they have lately. So this is cool. I'm really excited to get into this. I think they've introduced some cool characters in Dragonflight that we haven't seen a lot of in the game yet, like Iridikron. I mean, Iridikron is sort of called out in the synopsis they released as like, obviously Iridikron's like a big bad guy in the game, and he's, the leader of sort of our nemesis in this expansion. And I'm sure we're going to probably hear a lot more about Iridikron in the game as Dragonflight and future iterations of the game roll on. So this seems like a cool opportunity to dive into the story of who these characters are and sort of where they came from and what the relationship is to characters that we know and everything like that. I mean, I feel like it's been a really long time since we've had one of these that's sort of like that, that's sort of opening these doors. And I'm excited to get into it. I hopefully I'll have my copy in hand on the plane to BlizzCon. If that's how things end up shaking out, that would be really nice. That would be some nice in-flight reading. So yeah, very exciting, man. I didn't see this coming. I didn't think that we'd be getting a new WoW novel this year. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I had no idea this was happening. So I was pretty thrilled to see that there was going to be some more content for my walks, which I was pretty pleased about. The Olden book's still one of my favorite ones of all time. It was so well done when they actually released that. And it gave so much more context to a character that I think is such an interesting character. So yeah, okay. As far as the Arena World Championship goes, it's been kicking off. We got a big blog post for it. Beginning June 16th, there's going to be Arena World Champion stuff tuning in for all 4 cups on Twitch and YouTube. And you can see the teams qualify and continue in the tournament. Basically, Cup 1 is taking on the 16th to 18th. Cup 2 is the 23rd to 25th. Cup 3 is the 30th to July 2nd. And then Cup 4 is July 7th to 9th. So every single week, we are going to be having a cup from now until mid-July, where people are able to go and watch. And the prize pool is $400,000 for the entire season. And it's $10,000 per cup. So it's going to be exciting for folks, right? Like, it's a double elimination format. It's best of 5. So I think players will get a pretty good shot at, really proving their worth and getting through it. Obviously, twitch.tv/Warcraft, youtube.com/Warcraft, and places to watch these things. There is apparently going to be a German stream. I imagine there'll be other streams as well. So you can go to the blog post and get all of the links for those things if you're looking for something in more your native language to listen to. So it's great. I'm thrilled that the WoW stuff is back. I've really been missing Blizzard esports in general. I've still been watching a lot of StarCraft here and there because they seem to be very consistent at being able to ESL is very consistent at being able to host tournaments regularly for content for people to watch. Hearthstone has completely died off. They do like one every 4 months now, which is weird. I was so used to the like every 3 weeks or every 2 weeks or, at least every month there being a tournament thing for Hearthstone that it's weird that they've just essentially killed it. So I'm thrilled to see WoW stuff coming back in for people to be able to watch that. And
Yeah, well, those are kind of tales of two different ecosystems, right? Blizzard was like, we're just spinning StarCraft 2 off. Like, you want it, you can have it. We're done with it. So you take it ESL and do whatever you want. And ESL and other partners. I mean, the StarCraft 2 esports community is like ironclad. There will always be people who want to play StarCraft 2 and Brood War competitively and people who want to watch that. And it will shrink over time, but it will still always exist. Hearthstone has been kept in-house up to this point, and it's a cost center. They don't want to spend marketing dollars on Hearthstone when esports doesn't generate them money. And that, they cut the event schedule way down for this year. I mean, they gutted the esports budget internally for it. So it's been a whole thing, but I think they can do more community tournaments now, which was a staple of Hearthstone esports back in the day. There was community tournaments every weekend, multiple ones sometimes. And, once they brought in the Masters Tour system and everything like that, they tamped down on all that. And I think they're opening that back up. I think really that would be the key to revitalizing Hearthstone esports, is just give it to the community, or at least like let the community run whatever they want to run in addition to the official stuff. WoW it's like WoW esports has been around since 2007 or something, and just kind of in its lane forever. It is what it is. It's never been like a huge esports sensation, but there are people who are really dedicated to it. It is really fun. This weekend coming up is our first look at like a competitive environment, like an AWC Cup in Dragonflight Season 2 with the new bonuses and items and stuff. So that's cool. I probably won't be checking this out, honestly. It's been a while since I really watched any arena, but if you haven't been into it, you're like, oh, maybe I'll check it out. I don't know, but arena seems hard to follow. I do think they've done a good job over the years, like really refining the broadcast. They have some really nice tools to help you kind of follow what's going on.
Yeah, they've done a lot better.
Yeah, I think they've refined the commentary a lot. Like the broadcast team is usually really good at pointing out the important stuff to follow and like explain what happened after a round or whatever. So, it is a tough. I think it's a tough esport to follow for sure. But they've done a lot with the broadcast over the years too. So, yeah, cool to see it coming back. And I don't have the schedule in front of me, but I would imagine that this probably runs for like a month, and then we'll probably get MDI, and then we'll probably get the finals for Season 2 after that runs its course. So I think there's a lot of events on the calendar for the next couple of months here.
Yeah, WoW PvP has always suffered from, if you are not currently playing the game and doing PvP in the game, you will have a hard time keeping track of what's happening in it. Whereas so many other esports out there, even StarCraft, you can just watch and keep track of, oh, this person's built an army, this army's fighting this army, oh, this person beat that army. And, the commentators can kind of help you along with what's countering what and why this is winning and why this was a good decision or bad decision. With WoW, it's so fast-paced that if you aren't really sure where the meta is currently at as far as arena goes, it's very hard to keep track of what's actually happening on the screen. So, yeah, it's always been one that struggled as far as that goes. Obviously, shooter games being the easiest thing to track for esports because you just know when someone wins or loses because it's very straightforward as to what's happening on the screen. So there isn't a lot of like cooldowns and healing and bubbles and barriers and grips and stuns and all this sort of CC chain stuff that can happen with WoW stuff that if you don't know what the different characters and classes are capable of, you don't know what's in the bag of tricks that the person could actually execute, then it's hard to actually keep track of who's holding what and why and what people's motivations are until after, when they actually do the breakdown commentary that can take place. But if you folks have enjoyed this episode, then perhaps you'd consider becoming a patron. I want to give a big shout out and thank you to all of our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show. They help us to improve on the content we create. Today I'm giving a special shout out to Alianas, Arajian, Butter, Celian, Kapawi, Max, and Shorel. Thank you so much. You all give so much towards the show. Thank you to all of our patrons, including our newest patron, William D., for hopping on board to support the show. Our Patreon's over at patreon.com/thestartingzone if you want to consider heading in there and contributing. It means a lot. It helps us basically put out these episodes, host these episodes, pay all the costs associated with running the show. So we appreciate all of our patrons very much. And man, thank you so much for everything you give.
Absolutely. Yeah. Welcome aboard, William. Glad to have you. And thank you, patrons, past and present, for all your support of the show over the years. We really do appreciate it. And it helps a lot. It helps keep the show on the rails and keep it going. We've done a lot of episodes in our day, man. It's a lot to schedule, and the logistics of getting stuff recorded, sounding good, hosted so you can download it whenever you want to. I can't believe how long it's been sometimes. And then sometimes it feels like it's been, I don't know, even longer than that, maybe. I don't know. But thank you so much for supporting the show over these many years and into the future.
It still blows my mind that we started like at Legion launch, like ages and ages ago.
I know. Yeah, it's coming up on 7 years now. And I mean, we had both been appearing with Mick and whatever for like a year and a half before that, even. So, yeah, it's I think we're officially veterans.
I think so.
These days.
We've done several tours of podcasting in our day. Man, if you folks have enjoyed the show, another way to help us out is to head on over to your iTunes, your Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review. They always help us out. We love reading them here from our listeners, and we read them from anywhere, right? They can be different countries. It can be whatever you're looking for. So wherever you're listening, we appreciate the upvotes from you on iTunes and Apple Podcasts with those 5 stars, and we'll read them here. Yeah. That wraps up episode 582 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. You can also contact the show and leave us your feedback or ask a question over at our email at thestartingzone@gmail.com, or on Twitter at thestartingzone, or over on Discord. Thestartingzone.com/Discord is where you can find that Discord channel to join. And if you want to get your hands on some TSE gear, you can find that over at TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/thestartingzone. We've got shirts and mugs and stickers and stuff with logos on it. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
Best place to find me is always over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald. And you can find me streaming WoW Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Sundays, sometimes on Sundays, over on twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. Usually like 7:30 Eastern we get it going over there. Yeah, come check it out. We'll be doing Aberrus stuff and keys and whatever for, I guess, all summer probably, right? So,
Yep.
Yeah, come say hi over there.
If you're trying to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey, or over on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpencerHD, or on YouTube at youtube.com/@SpencerHD. And with that, for myself and Jason, we want to say thanks for listening, and jobs done.